Hey, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. We are in week 4 of our series called Counterfeit, where what we know is just a bunch of counterfeit money. That's what we usually know the term counterfeit. And so, what I want you to do right now, let's time travel for a second, okay? Not really actual time travel, but in your minds, I want you to go back to your first day of high school. Or for some of you, if you're watching your middle school, maybe your first day of middle school. Actually, I want you to go to the night before. Do you remember how it felt? I'm guessing it was probably 10% excited and 90% just terrified. And so looking back now, you know that you survived, so it wasn't that bad. But in the moment, it was a scary idea for you to start high school or maybe middle school. And I've never met a first day freshman who wasn't slightly nauseated. In fact, I actually threw up the first day that I went to one of my high schools. And I remember my first day of high school, I was pretty nervous and I couldn't stop thinking, this changes everything. I'm in high school now, and I had gotten pretty good at life as an 8th grader, but life as a high schooler, I'd never done that before. Plus, I was on the top of the totem pole, but now I was on the bottom being a freshman. And that time was a turning point for me. In the past few weeks, we've been talking about things that grow our faith, things that make our faith go from something that's counterfeit or just a fake copy to something real and personal to us. And we've been talking about how our faith can shift from being an imitation of someone else's to being something that we own ourselves. Maybe more than anything else, turning points in life do just that. And chances are you've had a few turning points in life already. And these are the moments that turn our lives around and set us in a direction that we weren't going in before. And sometimes they can be positive things or even just neutral things, like you got a part-time job after school, or you made the varsity team, or your mom got remarried, which is like, it's kind of neutral. Other times, they can be more negative turning points, like my best friend moved to another state, or my dad lost his job and then we lost our house, or we had been dating for 2 years and then she broke up with me, or my aunt has cancer, or my mom left us and my dad wasn't sure what to do, or I tore my ACL the first game of the season, or my ex-boyfriend started dating my best friend. Or some of my closest friends have quit being my friends. These are just examples, but think about a turning point that you've experienced in your own life. And so today, I want to spend some time talking about those sorts of turning points. Turning points are often difficult times that challenge us and make life hard. But what do they do to our faith? It's really wild. Tough times like these have the power to build our faith or completely destroy it. I've seen it go both ways working with students. And I've walked with teenagers through just about everything, and I can think of a bunch of times when I've seen students walk out on the other side of their storm with a rock-solid, unshakable faith. And it's hard to imagine that happening when they're in the middle of it, but it happens. Their faith grows stronger than before, and it's amazing to watch. And these circumstances can be described in no other way except turning points. They are defining moments, times when it seems like God was far away, but ended up being much closer than you thought. So when you get to the other side of these turning points, you're able to look back and say, wow, God is no longer someone I learn about in church. God is real and God is close to me. So when people encounter these sorts of circumstances, suddenly things get really, really personal. So we hear the metaphor that life is a journey all the time. The thing about a journey is that it includes starts, stops, turns, detours, reroutings, highways, and roadblocks. And every situation that happens in life affects the path of our journey. We all have turning points in life, good and bad. We make new friends, you get injured, you decide which instrument you'll play in band, someone damages your car, you get into a new relationship, your parents' relationship changes, and as all these situations are happening in your life, your story, what you want to be just easy going, ends up being this and 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 this. And by the end, you actually have a path that isn't a straight line like you hope for it to be, but it still is progressing in your life. And life is filled with turning points, and turning points change our faith. And one of the best illustrations of turning points that change someone's faith comes from the life of Jesus. It's described by one of his friends, John, who wrote it all down. And John writes this in John 11:1. It says, "Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha." And so these three, Lazarus, Mary, and Martha, they weren't just random people that Jesus stumbled upon. They were close friends with Jesus. So after Lazarus got sick, Mary and Martha, they actually reached out to Jesus. And this is verse 3. It says the sisters sent word to Jesus. So they sent a messenger to find Jesus, who was 2 or 3 or even 4 days away by travel on foot. And their message said, and this is at the end of verse 3, "Lord, the one you love is sick." In other words, they didn't even have to say his name. They knew that Jesus would automatically know who they were talking about. And Mary and Martha knew that Jesus had healed many people, even strangers. So of course, when Lazarus became sick with a life-threatening illness, they called upon Jesus to show up. But things didn't go exactly as they expected. Jesus didn't arrive at their house for a few days, and by the time he did get there, Lazarus had actually already died. And this was the worst kind of turning point that you could imagine. So you can imagine how Mary and Martha are feeling when Jesus shows up at their house, and Martha leaves her house and goes to meet Jesus, and as he is approaching them. And this is what happens in verse 21 through 22. She says, "Lord," Martha said to Jesus, "if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask." So imagine being in Martha's position. She has lost her brother. She's angry. She's sad. She's wondering why Jesus hadn't been there when she needed him to be. But even after saying all of that, she says something that communicates her trust in who Jesus was. And that's what turning points do for us. They sharpen our focus. They get our attention. They force us to ask the question, what do we really think God is like? So when things fall apart, when things don't go as planned, when things take a turn, what do I believe about God? Martha, on the worst day of her life, in the worst pain that she'd known, experienced Jesus being present with her. And then Jesus responds in verse 23. It says, Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha answered, "I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day." And Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this?" And Martha responds in verse 27. "Yes, Lord," she replied. "I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world." So Martha believed. She trusted in Jesus, even though her brother died. Jesus didn't show up on time to save her brother, but her trust in Jesus was still very real. So John tells us that after this is in verse 35, it says, Jesus wept. And then the Jews said, "See how he loved him?" In that moment, Jesus felt exactly what we feel when we mourn and our hopes are shattered. Jesus gets our pain. John telling us that Jesus wept is not just a fun detail. Oh, Jesus wept. It's actually a sign that we are never alone in our hurt. And as bad as things get, Jesus is in it with us. He experienced it alongside of us. So when a turning point gets our attention, we will always find Jesus in the middle of it with us. And at the hardest part of the story, when hope seems lost, Jesus is there. And then Jesus does something crazy. He asks Mary and Martha if they'd have their servants remove the stone covering of Lazarus' grave. But at this point, Lazarus has been in the tomb for 3 or 4 days, and it can't be pretty in there. So this was a strange request. But they did as Jesus asked, and they took away the stone. And in verse 41 through 44, it says, "Then Jesus looked up and said, 'Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me. But I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me.' When he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, 'Lazarus, come out!' Dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, 'Take off your grave clothes and let him go.' Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. And the story ends this way in verse 45. Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him." It would be easy to read this story and think the point is just a happy ending, that Lazarus has come back. The end. And it would be tempting to think that maybe that's what Jesus will do in all of our turning points, that he'll heal, he'll fix. Maybe that's what makes a real faith, when Jesus shows up and makes the impossible possible. But we've all had moments where we waited and we prayed and we hoped and we begged for God to do something, and he didn't. So what then? What does that mean for our faith? That's when we remember what Jesus did before he raised Lazarus from the dead. He wept. He was with Mary and with Martha in their pain alongside them before the miracle, before the resurrection, before anyone had an idea of a happy ending. He was there on their worst day. And he was there when the worst day became the best day and Lazarus was raised from the dead. And the same is true for us. No matter what kind of turning point that we are facing, Jesus is with us. If things get better or if things get worse, Jesus is there. And when we realize that, that is what grows our faith. Not that we always get the things that we want, but when we realize that no matter what happens, Jesus is with us. And that makes for a real faith, not a counterfeit faith. Our pain doesn't have to be the end of the story. It can be part of the story, but not the point. It can get our attention, but it doesn't have to destroy our faith. It can even move us closer to God. In fact, that's exactly what this story also shows us. It's possible for our faith to grow, for God to seem more real than ever to us, for us to see God more clearly in our painful turning point. It's possible to go through the toughest pain possible and come through it trusting God more. Not because God made it go away, but because God used it to stretch you, to grow you, and make your faith feel more real and personal. And when that happens, people around us will see God in a bigger way, just like the people who surrounded Mary and Martha. It will make God more obvious to them. They will see that your faith is authentic, not counterfeit. And as a result, maybe they'll choose to trust God more because they see it in you. The truth is, you're going to hit some turning points in your life. You've probably already hit a few, and you'll likely experience a few more. And every time you do, you'll be tempted to lean away from God, to wonder where God is or if God even cares. You may be tempted to think that maybe your faith is counterfeit because things didn't turn out the way that you wanted. But the story of Mary and Martha and Lazarus tells us no matter what we are facing, the worst day or the best day, Jesus is there. And when we believe that and experience that, it grows our faith. In fact, it can make your faith even more authentic than ever. And it may not feel like it when you are in the middle of it. It may feel like the opposite. But a turning point doesn't last forever. And it's possible that when you come out the other side, you have a greater faith than you could have imagined. Even more, your story of getting through the other side could be used to grow a real faith in someone else. Your story of how Jesus was with you, even when it was difficult, even when it felt like the opposite, could be the thing that inspires someone else. So when you are facing a turning point, ask yourself these questions. Where is God in this? Maybe it feels like nowhere because things are difficult and not actually getting better. So try looking a little bit closer. Maybe God is in the friend who texted you out of the blue to see how you were doing. Maybe God is in the encouragement from your coach or your life group leader. Maybe God is in the world outside your front door that you actually slow down to notice on a walk. Look for God because God is there. And then also ask, how can this tough situation help my faith grow? Remember, this turning point isn't forever. And when it's done, it's possible you can look back and see how your faith became more real. Maybe not yet, maybe not right away, but eventually, even the hardest things can become things that cause growth. Because God can use turning points to grow our faith. The truth is, nobody signs up for tough times. I want you to know that even on days that faith doesn't feel real, if you stay close and choose to hold on, you will find that God stays close too. God can use your tough times, as painful as they are, to make your faith more real so that the next time you face a difficult situation, that you are even stronger, even more sure, and even more confident that God is real and can be trusted. None of us want the tough times to hit us, but we all know eventually it's going to happen. Not because God is angry or mean, but because we live in a world where really hard things happen to almost everyone. It's part of life here. And when tough times happen, our faith can feel like a fairy tale or a fortress. It can feel completely made up or fake or like the only strong and real thing in our lives. It can be a place that we give up on existing or the place we can run to that makes us feel most safe. So depending on the day, it may feel like a little bit of both, good and bad, and that's normal. But I want you to know that even on days that faith doesn't feel real, if you stay close and choose to hold on, you will find that God always stays close too. God can use your tough times, as painful as they are, to make your faith more real so that the next time that you face a difficult situation, you are even stronger, even more sure, even more confident that God is real and can be trusted. So let me pray for you right now. Father, I pray for any of those right now who are watching, who are going through a difficult time. God, I know that we all go through them. I know that we all go through challenging seasons. But God, I just pray that we can find you even in the small things. That no matter what the outcome, whether it's a good outcome or a bad outcome, that we know that you are still good above all. And that you are still always there with us and you want to be with us. So we pray for our trust to grow in you, our faith to grow in you. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Hey, thanks guys for watching. I hope you guys have a great week, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.